Humanity is doomed. Each of us has a role to play, and each of our actions contribute to the greater system, regardless of the nature of those actions. We face a dilemma in the near future of a military draft targeting 25, 26-year-old Americans who are now going to be enthusiastically encouraged to leave their homes, don a uniform in one of the branches of service, and do a tour or two, or 3 or 4, or make it a career. But I would say that we shouldn't anticipate that the nature of this draft is the exact same as the one we're all familiar with, the Vietnam War. And although it was never actually really a war, it was officially a military action. From my perspective, having served in the Navy, many deployments, including hot zones, and seeing the events of the world today, I would say there's a near zero chance the draft isn't going to happen, and there's a far greater than zero chance that the draft just might be permanent and it's just going to go on forever. And instead of thinking of it as a draft, it'll be like many other countries around the world, mandatory military service for some citizens. And I'm going to discuss why all eligible people 40 years and under should go into the military, and this could be one of the only ways for the people to actually take back or get more involved. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to make an argument as to why you should definitely join the military right now and save humanity from itself. And one of the things that is often overlooked in the draft is why we even need a draft in the first place. And I think it's because people don't fully understand the role the military plays in the global infrastructure, and in particular the American. Every country, for the most part, has some form of military protective services, and that is because we always have to consider the lowest common denominator of humanity, the criminal element, and how much of our resources are based just keeping that at bay. And the larger ecosystem, just think about America alone, and that is the people who benefit most from the military service are generally the least likely to actually serve in the military, and that creates a counterbalance in a larger system. But the way the people are selected on how to serve is generally through some form of randomness. Balls picked like a lottery, something stone pulled out of a hat. Different countries have different methodologies, and sometimes there could be, I'm sure our next one's going to have computers involved, because all men 26 and below are going to be automatically registered. And so it's just a matter of pulling out. Now, while I overall very much support a mandatory, some sort of military, not military service, but some sort of civil service, military is not for everybody. But the way of draft that's going to happen like this is going to be way out of balance, because it still will not address the nature of who is serving. The randomness is going to be too random, rather than having the best qualified people. Because like I said, not everybody's meant to be in the military. Not everybody's fit for it. And so the reason why what's going to happen is if we can't get enough volunteers, they're going to have to go in and start just plucking people out of from their lives, and it'll be boys and girls playing together this time, fighting alongside each other or working. Really, though, only about, I don't know what the numbers are exactly. I don't really keep up with this stuff, but I'd say, way less than, just take the 80-20 rule. 80% of all military jobs are not combat roles. They're all support roles of some sort. And there's a lot of cool jobs as well as difficult, not so cool jobs as well. But we're looking at a mandatory draft for all genders, goes 4 years, 2 years, whatever it is. I was recruited while I was in high school still, a junior, and went active duty 6 weeks after my 18th birthday, and achieved more by the time I was 21 than I thought I might ever have done when I first started. And having an all-volunteer force is great if you have no problems with an abundance of volunteers. But if you don't have an abundance of volunteers, that's where things go out of whack. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I know the Navy alone spends millions and millions of dollars with the floating fleet week all across the country. Those are massive recruiting efforts with the Blue Angels. And that is all necessary because enough people will not go in and just serve 2 years. And a lot of unnecessary lives are going to be lost because of that imbalance right there. We shouldn't even need Fleet Week. Fleet Week should be something that shouldn't be a recruiting event. It should be a sign-up event. It's funny at the Fleet Weeks, the recruiting booths for the Navy people are generally has the shortest lines of people, but because we don't have, there are not a lot of, I shouldn't say we anymore, I'm not officially part of any military or government agency. I guess that's just the camaraderie coming out. There's like a quadrant of people, typical people that are going to go in the military, and so you have people that are totally fit for it. Like they have lots of people in their family have gone in the military. They've always considered it. Maybe they were in ROTC or something. It was just like going into the military is a really easy decision. There's other people who are tangentially reluctant, but not awry of it. And then there's people who are tangentially reluctant and awry of it, like they don't want to go of it, but they don't really have any experience around it. They just have an animosity against it for whatever reason. But those people, they're reluctant, but they would still go. So if you look at movies like Stripes, MASH, those are all those people. But what will happen when they start the randomness is, and then there's the fourth quadrant, which is the no way anyway. Doesn't matter if they're perfectly fit for it. They just want to, in my perspective, they want to take as much as they can from the system and contribute in other ways or not contribute at all. Then you have, within that quadrant to the no way anyways, that's where you have the cowards. But it's just pure, from what I see, it's pure cowardice from people who will not defend their own country, livelihood. If I give you an example, groups of friends get in a scuffle. One of them, instead of standing by their friends, runs away and hides. That's definitely an act of cowardice. That's where the title of this video is coming from. Or it's not the land of the free and home of the brave. It's the land of the incarcerated and home of the cowards. And when I say cowards, we have a cowardice system, a trustless system. Just imagine America as a system with lots of inputs and outputs. There's nowhere that we can operate in that system with complete trust. It's just quite the opposite. And until that changes, we can never evolve from just a sustainable society, something you have to sustain, to a regenerative society. a lot of people think that military service is not, or the military is not really about social change, experimentation. I would argue just the opposite. That's all it is. Actually, what what other kind of change or rapid change is like when you just do a military sweep of an entire region? That is definitely changing it socially. And so it's an extreme form, but a form nonetheless. Most people have no conception of what the military is about, and once you do, it changes your complete perspective of the entire nature of reality. At least it definitely did for me. But there's other people, call them the Rudies of the world, that would like to go, but for whatever, they would love to go into the military, but for whatever reason they just can't. They've got flat feet, they don't meet a certain physical requirement. When you go through the physical process, you definitely will find out, what you're capable of. But when they start the draft, it's just a random number. If you're eligible, you're eligible. And so there's going to be tons of people that are in the area of their kind of what I might call the tenderlings, certain aspects of society that need to be preserved just to preserve society. You don't want to be throwing, if you only have 2 doctors in town, you don't want to throw them on the front lines. And so there's always maintaining that balance. The problem is everybody wants to be the doctor staying at home, which is why we have to require a draft, why a draft has to happen. And when I talk about cowardice and the country's a nation of cowards, it's obviously not everybody. It doesn't apply to first responders, military people who obviously put themselves out there in harm's way to benefit others. That what I'm talking about excludes them. But if you've heard over the years, I've heard people use phrases, stuff like cop-outs, basically, to having never served or why they didn't serve. And some of the questions or some of the comments I've heard is, I could never serve because I don't like being told what to do. That's actually one of the most popular ones. And then there's the I got into college so I didn't need to go to the military. The only reason people go into the military is because they couldn't afford college or they couldn't get into college. I've heard all kinds of comments like that over my life. And those are just cop-outs from people who would be afraid to go to the front lines, would be afraid to put themselves in harm's way, are too afraid to say goodbye to mommy and daddy and go out on their own without any social support outside of their immediate new family, whatever unit they're assigned to. And so it's definitely like a rapid change in culture, in physical activity, in sleep patterns, and it's just not fit out for everybody. And so you take a tenderling, somebody who is reluctant to go, but they go anyway just because they want to, and it just tears them up and psychologically damages them, and they just can't navigate. They can't navigate the harshness of the regimental lifestyle. Those people are going to get drafted. Those people are going to get sent to the front lines. They're going to hurt themselves, the lives around them, and it's all because we don't have enough volunteers. Oh, another phrase I like to hear is, or I hear now a lot in the media, is military-age men. All men are military-age men. There's only certain militaries that will accept you, and they have different requirements. But you can be 40 years old and below, and join the Army. I'm sorry, join the Navy or the Air Force. The enlistment age is up to 40, and for the Army and the Marines, it's a little bit less, and there's some exceptions. But you can always get a waiver. You can always apply for a waiver. They can just say no. But even if you couldn't serve directly in the military for whatever reason, it's always good to go in and see what you're qualified for and see what your options are. Because a lot of times, how many millions of people have a mountain of college debt on a degree they regret? I got my degree while working my way through college and graduated from a top school, zero debt. used the GI Bill, a little bit of my own funds, walked away debt free. That feels really good. It's impossible to experience freedom if you've got a pile of debt mounted on your back. It's just not. So the military gives you an option of doing that, and all the way up to 40 years old, you can use it for graduate degrees, PhDs, all of that stuff. And so it's not just military age. People say, oh, for men, military age, they're talking about now it's the draft 26 and below. They only think about that because they are over that. So they can distance themselves from joining the military because they're not of draft age. But draft age and military age are two different things. So you can be military age 40 and below. So right now, if the 27 to 40-year-olds, right, if the 27 and 40-year-olds all stepped up and collectively went and took the ASVAB, went and found out what they were certified for or what they were qualified for, and found the military equivalent of what they enjoyed doing, and they are actually qualified to do that in the military, that is a huge bargaining chip in the job market. Like if you're teetering on your head, hey, I wonder if I want to go to college or go into the military or just go right into the workforce and skip school altogether, there's always sort of a hybrid version of that as well. I know somebody that just recently told me that he was in the process of going into the Army, and eventually he wanted to go into law enforcement after that, and he was about ready to go through all the process, and then he started interviewing, got recruited by a startup company, landed a big co-founder position in something very similar to what he wanted to do in the Army. But him being able to say having that an offer from the military is just as good as it's a job offer still. And so right now, everybody that's 26 and 40 years old can save everybody from 18 to 26 that doesn't want to be drafted by going in and joining and doing 2D. I mean, a lot of people can just go in and do 2 years. They got 4-year programs, 6-year programs. I don't keep up with it anymore, but there's a myriad of options. And it's unfortunate. A lot of people who have anti-war positions, I would say not all of them are in the no way coward category, but many of them are. And many of them are just mistaken. They want to do the right thing, but they're just engaged in a different type of war. If you go out there and actually watch the peace activists are just as violent than the warmongers. And so the way to upset, usurp, transmogrify the system is to integrate and become part of it. So as a thought experiment, just imagine if all the social progressives, all the military-minded people, all just went in and flooded the system in a military operation, and they just had to learn to work together because you have a task at hand. How much, think of that systemically, of over a 2, 4, 6-year period, not of what that happens in the military, but actually what happens after the military, after those people come out. You send a bunch of smart, talented people into the system who haven't been forcibly told they have to go. They're going to do a lot better in that system than the people who are plucked from the early parts of their youth, the 18 to 25 years old, those college years. Imagine what would happen globally, just to the consciousness of the world, if all the 26 and 40-year-olds went in, had a plan to fulfill their military service, and then exit into the civilian world or stay in as a career. Some of them will do that. what kind of message would that send? I guess the synergistic force of all of those people coming together would have an echo effect that would reverberate all around the world for till the end of time. Seeing something like that happen, and I don't think it'll happen. Maybe on a small scale, it'll do that. Being anti-war, to me, it's like being anti-gravity. It's just you could hate gravity all you want, but it's still gonna have its effect on you. I am not anti-war, but I am pro-peace. And if you can't solve the same problem or a problem with the same system that created it. So going in and solving the problems of war by protesting and being violent and aggressive, what you're doing is you're not fighting the war, you're joining it in a different way. You're just becoming part of the opposition force against a force that is designed specifically to deal with opposition forces. So when you oppose a force that's meant to deal with oppositional forces, you actually grow them and weaken yourself. And so that's not, or it's never worked throughout the history of all war and peace. And there's never been a time throughout the world where there isn't war going on. There's always a group of people trying to control all the resources, fighting wars from both sides. And that is the nature of the reality that we live in. As unfortunate as it seems, that's just kind of the way it is, the way it's always been. But that doesn't mean that's the way it always has to be. But in order to fully understand the way it could be, you really have to take an objective view of the actual problem and the nature of the problem and the causation. What is actually causing the wars? What are the systems at play? And so next, I've got a little whiteboard to demonstrate or show. I'm going to walk through and show how kind of I see what are the causations of war. But the question is, why do we have to have a draft? And it's that same thing when that one person runs away and does the cowardice thing, inherent there is the kernel of all the problems in the world. It's not the oligarchs that are pulling the strings of war, but rather the collective nature of humanity and their complete inability to get along with each other. It's a trickle up, what would you call it? A trickle up morality, maybe? The effect that we're actually looking for is never going to come. The empathy factor, I guess, is never going to come from this up down. It has to come collectively from the masses. We're looking at the lowest common denominator. What is the lowest common denominator? We could just encapsulate that down into the criminal element. And I'm not talking about people who are committing felonies or violent crimes. I'm really talking about moral crimes of the heart and mind. We'll get into that in a moment with my whiteboard. America is not a country at war. America is a warring country. And because of that nature of wariness, the last 100 years has been one of the most technologically innovative growth spurts that recorded history has ever seen. And there are always positives to negatives, and while not being pro-war, you have to recognize the role it plays in the evolution of technological innovation and societal evolution. When World War II happened and there were so many bodies went out, there was a mass influx of women entering the workforce that had never seen before, and so we saw a flourishing of society. People came back. A lot of people didn't come back, but a lot of people did. Thousands came back and went on to write books, lead companies, run successful small businesses, become actors, writers, and family people, just regular people. The military in general it's an equalizing force. right? Because you can set high expectations, but there's a lot of resources there to help you achieve them. And you can really achieve things in a very short period of time in a military environment that you could never even have access to out in the civilian world. For example, and for myself, I had access to and I had qualifications with the combat information systems on a Navy warship. You know, by the time I was 20, never could have done that. Anything close to that cool out in the civilian world from where I was. Let's take a look at the chart. This is the world. 8 billion people. And let's call this the 1% who control all the resources, bankers, corporate CEOs, and up here is the catalyzing force, whatever it is that binds these all together. And then here we have 8 billion people. And what we want to get society to is where all 8 billion are living in harmony in a regenerative nature, to where societies kind of just run themselves. But we live in a society which we actually need sustainability because we live in a trustless society. There's no place on earth in a civilized community where your average typical American can just go and live in peace and harmony with others and just trust everybody that they encounter. That would be naive. So we live in a trustless society that is actually, but it goes beyond trust. And here I divided this up into sort of 7 layers, kind of based on the Dante's 7 layers of hell, and a value chart where we have values over here and the anti-value over here. So in order to move from a trustless to a trusting society that is regenerative in nature, that society's value should inherently be honesty, integrity, service, justice, diligence, and treating people with the golden rule, do unto others. Those things should just happen automatically with everybody they encounter. Just like breathing air, being able to hear, see, things like that. Those are just, they would just be that part of the nature of everybody's interaction with each other. An expected level of integrity that you treat each other with, to where every layer in the system is regenerating itself. And over here, the anti-values that require sustainability, we have frenemies. Those are the people. Frenemies are everywhere. They surround every player. They are a player themselves, and what they want to be is the center of all the deals, and they're willing to make moral substitutions in their own actions to actually bring you harm. Steal deals, steal resources, slow down your progress, not be happy for you. And next you have thieves, liars, serial assaulters of a sensual nature. And this includes everything from grape to also what I consider one of the big hiccups in our society is the, what do they call themselves? The guys who hit on girls on the streets. They have schools and stuff for a girl that'll come to me. But they will go up and what they're trying to do is hit on girls on the streets, and I consider this the sensual nature because they're wanting to hook up with these girls, and they're being very aggressive, and it's just I don't think people should do that in general at all. But if somebody expresses a no in there, then one should just walk away after the first time and not pursue it. But people think that in these cases, continue to pursue it, and what they're doing is they're just push and push and push and push. Now, a lot of people, particular guys, well, I'm not like that, so I don't really have to worry about that. But that's completely wrong, because the people who are doing this, serial assaulters of a sensual nature, are also, when they're not doing that with women, they're doing that with guys and disrupting the entire system. They're the frenemies, thieves, and liars, and this is just another way they exercise their unbridled aggression. And then the deleters, people who take their own lives, because all they have in their lives is people like this. And then what I think is one of the absolute worst things in society, systemically. This doesn't have anything to do with morals, but when I think about just systems integrity, fibbers are the worst. Why is it? Because if you were to count up each one of every instance of this, liars, thieves, what I consider here a liar is somebody who is purposely deceiving somebody to hurt them, to bring them harm. Something that it's not a fib. It's actually meant to do. There's maliciousness behind a lie of some sort. Fibbers. So if you were to count up all of these, all 8 billion people, and each day, whenever one of them has one of these actions, if you're actually able to count that up, the fibbers would eclipse them all combined. And so we live in a system that requires sustainability because it is trustless. You can't really trust anything. And unfortunately, the further you go down on the value scale, oftentimes the more money you make. And so down here, where we see the dregs of society, the people that require sustainability are the Jack Christians, lawyers, venture capitalists, some CEOs, politicians, and churches. Those are just some examples of people who purposefully exploit others on a large scale of some sort, lie, cheat, and steal, and justify it with some sort of mythical morality. But what we're really looking at is system integrity. How do we create a system integrity so no matter where we're at in here on the income scale, you all have a quality of life that is personally acceptable? And we don't have that now, because a lot of the what we're talking about is disparity when we see the injustices of the economic system. And one of the reasons why we have an economic system like this is because we live in a dog-eat-dog world, which that kind of action, any type of relentless bullying, exploitation, hurting others, unethical business practices, that is a form of mutually destructive behavior. Because these people may benefit, even have a great life full of luxury, but overall they're hurting the whole system. They're not mutually destructing this person they're hurting, but rather the system as a whole, slowing it down, keeping us in sustainability, and keeping regenerativeness out of touch. And so, what does this have to do with the military? I'm glad you asked. And so, suitable, reluctant. I'll remember where that was. So here we have from 18 to 25 and 26-year-olds. Then we have 27 to 40. What does the military offer? Travel adventure, the GI Bill, and paid training. This is the big deal right here. Because think about how many of you have to pay to go to college. Here, you pick the right job that's for you. They pay you to get all the training you could ever need in that occupation in just a few short years. You'll learn a lot more going through paid training. Most people will learn a lot more going through paid training in their preferred occupation than they would spending 4 years jumping around from course to course trying to find themselves in between parties. So some people are suitable, some people are reluctant, some people are no way, some people are no way cowards. Suitable, reluctant, and these people are semi. So they're reluctant, yes. These are reluctant, no. They really don't want to go, but they will. They really don't. They kind of don't want to go, but they will. Here, they really don't want to go, and here they absolutely don't want to go, and here they're suitable for it, and they want to go into it. And the problem is we don't have enough people here because everybody wants to be here without understanding what it takes to maintain this. Because everybody here, you could cross this out and just make this the USA. $350 million or whatever it is right now. Same model. These are the top 1%ers. They're not most of them are not going to go to war, but their kids definitely can. If they're under 40 years old, they are the first ones that should be going because they're the ones who benefit the most from this. And the way to move and expand, let's just say this is the common denominator. We live where all the resources are in the lowest common denominator. And this is where your most college educated are, but people who are actually practicing their values are generally just your average people who are living decent lives, who just want to go through their lives without any drama. They just want to work hard, have sex with their spouse, go to the games, and make society work. That's what they're in. That's that attitude that they have, and it's how they want to go through life. And it's just not possible with this working on a sustainable model. Because it's not, as long as you have this, it's a corrupted model that requires lots of lawyers, lots of crime, in order for it to perpetuate itself. And so, if every 27 to 40-year-old just put themselves psychologically into the suitable market, went in and joined the military for a minimum of 2 years, it would relieve the stress the system will endure from not just having the people go into the military that don't want to go, but all the in-between, all the protests and everything that is definitely going to happen when they start drafting people. If you could just avoid that, take the power back from here, and as the people exit the military, that's when they become the professors, the generals, stars. In whatever they do, they will be a star. And so you'll have a regime. This, if you were to take this off and put Israel in here, regardless of what you think of them politically, They live on a system that's much more trusting, because all of these people in their communities, most of them anyway, not all of them, have served some form of military service. So they have a camaraderie that they understand at a much deeper level what it takes to keep your border secure. And if you don't think that's important, and I'm not talking about physical borders, not physical borders, I'm really talking about psychological borders and the borders of commerce. The U.S. Navy alone has a global grid protecting the sea lanes. If the Navy called off what they're doing on a daily basis, they just said, hey, you know what, we're just going to keep our borders, let the rest of the world care for itself, the entire world would erupt in massive, massive piracy. The prices of everything would go up. All the luxuries that you're now experiencing, imagine everything was even 10 times the expense. Chaos everywhere, just if the Navy alone did that. And so if you like doing things like going on vacation, have you ever been on an airplane flight going overseas? The only reason why that happens is because we have a global military force ensuring the safety to a high degree of the travelers. If you look at our modern banking system, it evolved out of a military force. The Knights Templar was a military force that evolved, and it was because the nature of here, thieves everywhere, our entire monetary system had to exist. It came out of the fact that nobody can trust each other. So I'm under no illusion that this would actually happen. Just a thought experiment. What if? But I think it's very important to have these conversations for everybody, because if you're not exerting yourself onto the system will definitely exert itself on you. While unfortunate it is, peace through superior firepower is the only thing that works, because people evolve as consciousness expands.